Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple: to help you create environments where people thrive. Through real conversations, practical strategies, and powerful stories, we equip leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself to build cultures rooted in purpose, performance, and authenticity. Because culture isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. This is the Contagious Culture Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. Look, today is an amazing day, and it's going to be even a better day if you do one thing for us. One thing for us at the beginning of the episode before we actually get started. Can you just like this episode? Can you comment or review the episode and just tell us how much you love the Contagious Culture Podcast, what you've learned, how you've really been able to share this episode with someone that added some additional exposure, some additional education, and how we've been able to really expand the message inside of organizations. Look, today's conversation is going to be for those individuals who want to continue to create ecosystems of change where employees are thriving, not just surviving. And this conversation is one that we've had recently with an individual inside one of our Growth Alliance conversations, inside one of our Growth Alliance programs. And it's a conversation about how do we navigate the waters of these donor conversations? How do we set it up? How do we frame it? How do we engage with donors at a high level? And how do we ultimately close those conversations in a way that gets us what we need as organizations, but also provides our donors a return on investment? And I want to highlight the point of return on investment because it's not just about us. It's not just about what we want. It's not just about what we need organizationally. It's also about what we can do for the organization that's sitting, that's standing, that we're communicating with in front of us. So look, we're excited to have this conversation with you today. And if it's your first time listening, we thank you for being a part of the Contagious Culture Podcast network and family. What you can expect in our episodes is practical strategies, stories, real-time and proven advice and methodologies, techniques that you can be able to use right now that can enhance your ability to not just grow your nonprofit organization, not just optimize it, but better tell your story, better ultimately partner with individuals and organizations that are in alignment with your brand, better really propel the relationships forward in a very, very intentional way, and really be able to grow something that is ultimately sustainable. Look, this is another episode, and I'm going to open us up with a story from a recent organization that touched base with us that we got a great chance to talk to, based in Pennsylvania. And there was a few things that she noted in our conversation at the beginning that really allowed us to really dive deep. But before we get into it, Dan, how you feeling? Your camera was a little wonky earlier. How you feeling?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that lately. I've noticed that. We've been on calls and I put it on mute because I don't want people hearing my background. I'm trying to keep the window open because it's nice outside here. And I'm just having issues, man. But I'm doing good. I want people to throw us some flowers, man. We need our flowers. We've talked about some great stuff. We got more great stuff coming. As you said, comment, share this with people. I'm doing good. This conversation was shifting for us yesterday, having this conversation and in the past week, having this conversation and being able to talk about it here. This was, I don't know if I'd say a mindset shift, but I'm really excited to talk about this because I think it shifted our perception of how we serve the populations that we want to serve, talking like a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk about that because I think that a lot of people are experiencing this, and we experienced, as we spoke about when we debriefed, there were two different sides to this. And that second side, when vulnerability started to show through, really informed and kind of opened something up in my mind, reflecting on how important that conversation was to that individual and to us.
It's interesting that you bring that vulnerability piece up. And anybody listening right now, vulnerability is the gateway to your organization's velocity, right? And what I mean by that is that we have to be vulnerable in the various challenges that we're experiencing as an organization. We have to be vulnerable in communicating the gaps that are present within our team. We have to be vulnerable in the fact of what we are experiencing within our organization and where we can use some additional assistance. Because only when we're vulnerable, we give other people, organizations, partners, collaborators, consultants, contractors, whomever, the opportunity and the privilege to be able to meet us where we are, but then also provide us a plan, provide us a strategy, encouragement, or some tool that can make us 1% better and can move us in a way that gives us the ability to impact people more deeply. And in the conversation, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you're preaching. I think vulnerability also, it helps us see things we didn't before, helps us see how we really should be treated, what we should be afforded, and just how prevalent it is in the nonprofit space that people come in talking big game and don't do anything.
Oh, no, 100%. And that's why I love the conversation that we're going to explore today, because this woman that we had a chance to talk to came in within years of experience, is running operations at a multi-million-dollar organization that's based in the Northeast, and simply just had questions on what are the questions that we should ask donors? Where do we find them? What are the funding priorities of this organization? And she really started to resonate when we started talking about one of our processes of how we engage with nonprofit organizations. And we saw it across the virtual screen where she really started to nod her head, where we talked about before we can ask donors for anything, before we can really be able to tell our story more effectively, before we can do all of these things on the front end, we have to ensure that our back end is, one word, optimized. Because I think that a lot of organizations make the mistake because they want all of these things, but they're not really ready for it. And if you got that $10 million gift, if you got that influx in members, that influx in volunteers, are you really ready to be able to execute at a high level? And one of the cool things about the Growth Alliance is that we provide scenario-based coaching so that you can ultimately maximize the results by being prepared to navigate some of these conversations, to navigate, these prospecting conversations, these donor meetings, and these closing conversations that are necessary for you to be able to grow your organization forward. But one of the things, a few of the questions that she asked or one of the challenges that she noted initially was, I need to define what I'm asking for, and I need to increase the amount of times that I'm actually asking. Because what she noted, she said, we're not asking, connections are coming to us, but we don't go out wanting to connect with other people. And then we mentioned a simple question, like, what types of companies do you ideally want to connect with? And there wasn't an answer because this information, this research, this perspective wasn't broken down yet. This brainstorming process wasn't broken down yet. So we've broken down four things that we want to help you do today, but ultimately we help organizations and executive leaders do every single week inside our Growth Alliance community. Go to the joingrowthalliance.com, joingrowthalliance.com. And it's how to talk to donors, how to find donors, how to pitch donors, and how to close donors. Because without donors, we're not able to develop and opportunities for us to be able to impact people. Dan, am I missing anything?
No, but I love, I want to add to what you said there. And when you said there was this silence, we're pressure testing these things. We're role playing. People aren't necessarily doing that in an individual context. They'll do it generally with groups, but we're actually doing these things individually. And I love, you had mentioned in that conversation, how if they got a $5 or $10 million gift, what are they going to do with it? And that's such a great question. Do you have the infrastructure? Can you share the impact? Do you have a place to put it for it to grow? Can you, honestly, can you get the tax receipt out in time? Right? Like, do you have all these processes on the back end optimized? And then I love how you mentioned those 4 things and you said donors, because something we kept hearing in that conversation that I had brought up was, oh yeah, we're doing this grant, we're doing this or that. We had a fractional chief advancement officer, and I was like, oh, so what did they do? And they were like, nothing. And I was like, oh. She's like, they didn't even talk with donors. And I was like, hold on, that's your chief advancement officer fractional, which means you probably paid a significant amount of money to them over a short period of time. They didn't have they didn't have stakeholder interviews with donors. They didn't get to know your staff even virtually. Like, they weren't out out in the museum in the center, like talking with people and introducing themselves. Like, you can do all that stuff virtually, right? But and then we asked through the grant, I was like, well, what about your annual fund? They were like, no, we haven't really focused on that. That hasn't been a thing. And I was like, wait, what did this person do when they were in there? So I say all that to say, you mentioned donors. And so many nonprofits, I had this conversation this morning, they're always looking at grants. There's nothing wrong with grants, but there are a hell of a lot more donors than there are funders, right? And that's a really important differentiation there, is donors versus funders. They're great funders, but there's certainly a higher chance you're going to get donors versus funders. So let's go jump into it.
Let's do it. If you're a nonprofit executive that's listening in, an executive, a founder, or just someone that supports an organization, whether you're a board member or just a team member, if you can't clearly communicate what you do in one sentence to really identify your organization, I think that's where the problem begins. And what I mean by this statement is, we are a blank that blank for blank so that blank. So we are a community organization that provides what for what population, and then so that, and what is the transformation. And we talk to so many organizations all the time that have all of these grandiose ideas and big audacious goals and all of these things that they want, but they're not clear in what they even do and where they came from. Earlier this morning, we had a conversation with one of our students within our Growth Alliance program that just pitched Best Buy for $300,000. Shout out to them. And it's just setting them up for just an amazing multi-year partnership after we really walk them through this process of preparing their organization, really getting optimized and proving their story and really being able to pitch. And what she communicated is that, first of all, the story in which she communicated was so concise. She realized that she needed to start with the hook. And the hook is that this is the reality in regards to underrepresented students. And then she went directly into saying, this is the problem that we exist to solve. So she clearly communicated what that problem was. And then once you understand the hook, once you draw them in with the hook, once you clearly communicate the problem that you solve, now it gives you the opportunity and the platform and the connection to be able to build and communicate your story. Because once we communicate what we solve, now people are interested in going backwards to, well, what got you here? So then you communicate what we call your origin story, your origination story. And then as you're communicating your origination story, then you bridge to the transformation. Like, what is the transformation that you've been able to create? What have you actually done? What do the numbers say? What does the data communicate? And then when you're closing it out, this now gives you the opportunity in this conversation to say one thing. This is why we as an organization want to partner with your organization, because, and then you create and communicate what we call the alignment. So that's how you talk to donors. Like, again, we said that we're going to leave you with 4 things: how to talk to donors, how to find them, how to pitch them, how to close them.
Hey, it's Kyle.
Sorry to interrupt your programming, but I got a quick culture check for you. How's your team's energy right now? I mean, literally, right now. Are people feeling inspired? Or are they just showing up? See, here's the truth. Culture doesn't change because we talk about it. It changes because we live it actively every single day. And that's what I help organizations do. Build contagious cultures that people actually want to be a part of. Through keynote talks, interactive trainings, and hands-on consulting, I help leaders transform the way their teams connect, perform, and grow. So if your culture needs a little bit of spark, let's light it up together. Visit theculturelab.org, again, theculturelab.org, or connect with me directly on LinkedIn at Kyle S. King to learn more about how we can work together. Because remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching. Now let's get back to the program.
Now, from a personal side, before we even get to the pitch, there's some basic fundamental things that we need to do to be able to really just start building that relationship with donors. And then when you think about building that relationship with donors, what does that look like? What are those initial conversations look like?
You know what? It's different in all different scenarios, Kyle. In my most recent role, I really did a lot of cold outreach. And I like to think that every role I've been in has brought me some knowledge and some education. And, when you look at that cold outreach, I'm looking at what I can see externally from this person, from this business, from this organization that aligns with what I'm doing. That's the first thing. I'm not going to reach out to any Joe Schmo. Right? I'm trying to reach out to a business, an individual, maybe someone who is like a second degree of separation from someone that I know. And I'm saying, if I'm going to reach out to them, is my pitch just strong enough for us to be able to connect? Whether it's a warm connection through someone in my network, whether it's a business who, I had a crazy idea to do a play on the Waste Management Classic golf PGA Tour event. I wanted to do that. So that was a really great hook because the business I was reaching out to liked education and they did stuff with a lot of K through 12. And then there are just other people where there was something adjacent, whether it was a program at the institution I was at, whatever, where I would say, hey, I want to lead in with that. I'm going to lead in with this external alignment connection that I see.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take that opportunity to get the intro so I can learn about you. And then when I learn about you, I can see if there's alignment with the work that I'm working on specifically. So I'm always looking, we talked about hook, right? You just mentioned about hook with one of our Growth Alliance members. I'm looking for that hook because this isn't like I'm just reaching out to random people to try to connect. That's not a quality outreach, right? There is such thing as a quality cold outreach, and there's such thing as just like a freezing outreach. There is no connection there. Yeah, that's like I'm gonna reach out to Mark Cuban. Like, like for what? Why? Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting perspective, though, that you bring up, Dan. Is like if there's no why behind it, why are we doing it, right? Because I think a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times we're reaching out to people based upon their title, based upon their notoriety, but there's no alignment in values. There's no alignment in mission. There's no alignment in integrity. There's no alignment for where we're going. And now we've wasted time reaching out, getting on the phone, communicating, potentially pitching. And we recognize at the end, I could have probably identified a misalignment on the front end. So one of the things that Dan always says is, relationships in any realm is a process, right? Donor relationships are not very different than personal or professional or intimate relationships. Now, different in some aspects, of course. You're not literally physically dating your donors. Hopefully you're not. But when you think about the day one of a relationship, you're not asking this person to marry you. I would hope not. Or you need to be checked into a psychiatric hospital. But when you're building this relationship, you're asking them to potentially go to eat. You're asking them to potentially dance. You're asking them, what are their interests? You're asking them about their family and their history and their background and all of these different things. That's what that first conversation looks like. And through that first conversation, it really should be able to give you an understanding where we're going in this relationship. If this person is a good fit, if this person has the heart, has the capacity, has the ability or the willingness to be able to potentially contribute to my life, or in this case, to my organization in the ways that we would potentially need them to, is this a good fit? Or do they have potentially access to the potential good fits? And then through these conversations, it's more of curiosity than a manipulative tactic to close someone. Like, are you genuinely curious about this individual's life? And are you building a relationship based upon not where you're trying to go, but what you can give?
That's a great point, Kyle. I think that, sharks can smell fear, right? I think that donors can smell inauthenticity. And I think that in our work, there are too many people who go in with only the end goal in mind, which is the unrealistic goal of, I'm trying to close a gift today. Even on a first conversation, I'm trying to close a gift. I'm here to get your money. They're not going to say it that way. They're not going to talk that way, but they're like, I'm here to get a gift, right? Maybe it's not this week. Maybe it's next week. Maybe it's the week after, right? But we've talked about this in the Growth Alliance, right? Can you tell us the 3 different ways that we interact with people? We've talked about this with boards, right? Like, what are those 3 areas that you should be focusing on? I call it time, talent, treasure, but you call it something a little bit different, and I love what you call it.
So time, talent, treasure, and ties.
I think when we were talking about boards, we were talking. There was like an acronym. It was like 3 N's or 3 M's or something like that.
3 R's. The 3 R's.
Yes, the 3 R's. Yes.
Yes. So we talk about reach, revenue, and relationship.
Yes. That, I think that is such a great way to look at it. Is when you're engaging with people, it shouldn't just be about the money, right? You should be curious, as Kyle said, but also you can look at it from a different way. It's only natural to say, well, I want to meet this person because they have reach.
Yeah.
Right. I want to meet this person. And sorry, tell me the other 2 again.
Reach, relationships, and revenue.
You want to talk with this person because they have money, right? That's the initial one.
Yeah.
Right. But then relationships, that's really important too. I've worked with a bunch of donors and people who aren't donors, community members. They have great relationships. I want to add value to what they're doing, but I also know that if I take care of them, if I'm authentic with them, if I provide value, they're going to provide me with relationships, and they've done that, right? Exactly. So I think that is really important to think about. Now, going back to this whole thing, donors can smell that inauthenticity, right? And the thing that I've been thinking about recently over the last month or so, and I can't remember if I've shared this in the Growth Alliance or not, is really, I say it in the phrase of, how do you start with yourself and end with your role? Right? How do you start with your character? Because if you want to come in there authentic, you need to start with who you are.
Yeah.
Are you a funny person? Are you a goofy person? Are you a respectful person? Are you a curious person? Are you an excited person? Go in there and be authentic to yourself, to those characteristics, and then end with your role. Go in there curious about this person as your authentic self as an individual representing an organization. Leave there letting them know my role is in philanthropy, right? I'm looking to help raise funds for this mission. Doesn't have to be where we end, but I want to end, that's where it is. I want to come across as who I am, and then end with just the awareness of, this is what I do, but this isn't who I am, because we know people give to people that they like and they trust.
Agree. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make. We always begin with our role, and then we forget ourselves. And then we feel like once they see us, they're not going to connect with us. So we mask it. And it's that masking that leads us to not wanting to be able to or not allowing us to even receive the resources that we need for the organization. And one of the biggest myths that we want to debunk is that people are giving you money. Because a lot of times we hear, oh, well, I don't like to ask for money, or I don't, all of these different statements that people give. I feel queasy when I'm asking for money, and it's not your money that it's going to, and it's not your money that that you're really asking for either. So can you talk about the confidence that people have to develop to be able to get to a point where they're comfortable in requesting the need for their organization?
I want to call it confidence, awareness, and separation, right? You need to have the confidence to take the first step of asking for the meeting.
Yeah.
You need to have the awareness and the separation. And we talked about this with one of our members. I know this was what they were saying. They had said to us, well, I feel weird about asking, like I'm not comfortable with it. And I'm like, hold on. You're not asking for you. You need to separate your it from your ego, right? You're not asking for the money for yourself. You're asking for the funds to support the young girls that you want to work with in your nonprofit, that you are working with. You need to separate. You need to have the awareness to be able to separate yourself from your work, and make sure when you go into those conversations, you're inviting them to support the work that you are helping facilitate, right? This does not go to you.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really important note, because in that conversation we had the other day with that individual at the Science Center, I so appreciate the vulnerability of what they said. And they had said, I'm not comfortable asking for money. They were like, I don't want to do anything that I don't know about. And I was like, okay, I respect that. I don't want to do something I don't know anything about, right? There's a difference between being uncomfortable doing something and being unaware and uneducated about what you're doing.
That's good.
Right? So when they had said that, I was so appreciative of that vulnerability, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Right? We're here to help them understand about that awareness and separation of them as an individual, right? When they're asking for gifts, of them going to a meeting and leading with their character and themselves and ending with their role. But they want to be aware of, how do I do this? What am I asking for? That goes to the heart of all of it, right? You got to know.
You have to know, people. Anybody listening, you have to know. You have to know, what are you asking for? You have to know who you are as an organization. You have to know what you need and why you need it. And you have to know where this money is going and what is the impact that's going to come from this money. And today we're talking about money, because it's a necessary conversation that I think oftentimes we stray away from or shy away from within these conversations within nonprofits. But you're running a business. Nonprofit is just a tax status.
That's good.
You're running a business. Nonprofit is just the tax status.
Love that.
If we don't approach our businesses in the way that businesses approach them, then your tax status really won't matter, because you won't have anything to file, because you won't have a business. So I want us to approach this. What is your unique selling proposition? What is the origin story? What do you do better than any other nonprofit organization out there? Why should I give to you? Outside of your own personal experience and your charisma, what makes you different? What is the story that you're going to tell me that's going to have me give $300,000? Is your pitch really worth $300,000? Do you practice your pitch? Do you often tell your story? Have you done your own 10,000 hours communicating your story and having conversations with donors? It's in these realities and these vulnerabilities that allow us to really be able to unpack maybe why we're not receiving the revenue, why we're not receiving the funds, why we're not receiving the support that we need. The money you need to grow, to sustain, to scale your organization, to really be able to advance the impact, it requires some unpacking. It requires some data. It requires sharing, and it requires you being the person that really leads this work. So how do you talk to donors? You have real conversations and you lead with vulnerability. How do you find them? You have to understand what are your priorities of an organization? What are the various things that you need to be able to do? Where is your organization going? And then I want you to type into Claude, ChatGPT, whatever AI platform that you use, who is funding this type of program? Who is funding this type of thing? And then I want you to go on LinkedIn and find people that work at those organizations and simply just have a conversation. Hey, how do you fund these types of programs? What are the businesses out there that you do fund? What does that funding cycle look like? What are some of the information that you need to be able to best prepare to be able to deploy these resources to companies? And hey, at the end of this conversation, do you know of any other organizations out there doing similar work? That way, well, okay, you do. Can you make a direct introduction for me? And in that process, you're getting your paperwork together, you're getting your financials, you're getting your impact statement together, you're doing all the work just by being a steward and being humble and asking great questions. So that's how you talk to them. That's how you find them. How do you pitch them? You lead with your hook. Just like Dan and I were saying earlier, you lead with your hook, then you communicate your story. Then you showcase your value that separates you from other organizations. And then on the back end, you bridge them into what you actually need. You have to know your numbers, people. And then you close them. You move them from relationship to reach, right? You move them from just a relationship to reach. And what I mean by that is relationship is one point, but then when we're moving people to reach, now you're allowing them to advance your business, your growth forward. Through revenue, through money, through funds, through gifts. Dan, what are your thoughts?
I love it. I mean, I got a bunch more, but I think we need to save it for another podcast. I think this is great. And Kyle, I think the piece we should end on is you had 4 points, right? And we've covered 3. And the last point was, how do you close? And I think that it is so much simpler than what people tend to think it is. You want the person that you're working with, the entity that you're working with, to trust you so strongly that all you have to do is invite them to participate. That's it. We always talk about for volunteers and board members, right? Invite them to take part in something.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same thing. You can't rush relationships. I don't care if you were supposed to raise 50% of what you needed to in the first half of the year because it's halfway through the year. That doesn't work. That's not how it is. You can't rush relationships with businesses, with individuals. That does not work. But what you can do is continue to build the relationship to the point where they understand you, they know about you on more than just a business level, they trust you, they want to meet with you. So then you can go to them and say, hey, I see the alignment. I believe in this. I know you trust me because we wouldn't be here if you didn't. I know that you like me. You don't have to say this exactly, but I know you like me, right? That's why we've gotten together. We laugh. I really want to invite you to be part of this thing that we are working on because it's special. And if financially it doesn't work out for you, and you don't have to say this part, you could wait till after they say yes or no. But it's just like Kyle said, the 3 R's, right? Maybe they don't have the funds right now. That happens all the time when you go to a business. They're like, oh, we put money into this, we did this or that. Okay, well, I'd love for you to come to the event. Can you come to the event? What about our board? I know you've got a great network. I know you believe in me and you believe in our mission, right? Come take part with me. I'm not going to lead you astray. I'm going to keep you on the line. We're going to have fun together. We are going to make an impact. Or you don't really have time. Okay. Can you make an introduction? I know you said in your network, you knew this person, you got this or that. Can you make an introduction to me for like 2 or 3 people that you think might have some time or might have some interest? That's it. That is it. Copy it. Copy everything I said. Let's put that in a clip. We got to get a clip from that to put on LinkedIn. Like, that's it. It's not that hard, but it's about leading with the character, ending with the role, and doing that throughout their relationship. So when you get to the end, they see you as you, not as your role. And that's how you close the gift.
Lead with character, then respond with role. Lead with character. Ask the right questions, be genuinely curious, and answer this question. What type of culture are you spreading? Remember this, the energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Contagious Culture Podcast. If this episode challenged or inspired you, hey, take a second to share it with someone who's building culture in their world. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more leaders, educators, and change makers just like yourself join the movement. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube at Kyle S. King for more tips, tools, and methodologies to be able to help you create this ecosystem of absolute excellence. Until next time, lead boldly, live intentionally, and remember, your culture is contagious. Make it worth catching.